Hello and welcome to another episode of Hacking with Friends. Today I'm here with my friend and OSINT researcher Christian, who's going to walk us through a little bit of the sources of data we can find in our investigation today that's going to be on trucking, which is something I know all of you have been dying to hear about. But you might be surprised to know that trucking is one of the biggest employers in almost every single one of the 50 United States. Did you know that?
Yes, I did know that.
And the reason for that is we both used to work for a company that was basically Uber for trucking, and we had to do lots and lots of research and learn a lot about the way and why this kind of research matters. So is there a reason why someone who's going to hire basically any trucker would want to do this sort of research in terms of just limiting their liability?
Well, just right off the bat, if you think about it, if you have cargo, you have, valued goods, you're not just going to want to have anybody take that that cargo with them to deliver it for you without, doing your due diligence, making sure that it's going to get where it's supposed to go. Otherwise, you're out that money if anything happens to it. So
exactly. And in addition to this, there are some legal precedents that say if you just hire some guy that has a clear history of driving unsafely, maybe a bunch of drug-related violations that show that he might be under the influence when he's driving your goods, then you can be the one that's held responsible for any accidents they cause if there's a whole bunch of lawsuits that stem from that event. So let's say that you just don't even bother to check the resources that are publicly available before engaging any sort of carrier that's moving your goods. Well, even if you're a small business and you're just trying to move something across the country or just across town, if you don't check this stuff, it can really actually cost you. So this episode is actually kind of a shout out to trucking if that's the industry you're in. These are a bunch of resources you can use to do your due diligence on a carrier before going with them, or if you just want to do due diligence on yourself. Now, if you're an OSINT researcher, a reporter, or somebody else who just will occasionally need to cover the trucking industry, it's really fascinating to know how many government resources are out there if you want to look up a particular carrier or find out whether or not they've engaged in conduct that might basically qualify as endangerment, so that you could potentially be prosecuted for hiring them when clearly they're dangerous and shouldn't be on the road. Now, we can go ahead and switch to my screen. There is a somewhat dated article I have pulled up that I think is really telling of what this risk is. That is called 58 Million Reasons to Do Your Due Diligence. Now, what this is about is basically how if you don't check to make sure that the person who is moving your goods is a safe driver, you can be held in a lot of trouble and basically pay up to, in this case, $58 million in damages, because you should have at least checked to make sure on all these publicly available resources that this person wasn't engaging in reckless behavior. Now, aside from a commercial driver's license, Christian, can you think of another thing that you might want to check on before going with a carrier, even if you're moving goods a short distance?
Oh yeah, of course. So, first thing you're going to look up is always going to be what's their DOT number.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have that.
What is a Department of Transportation number?
Yeah, so basically when you are going to become a trucker and you would like to move freight, you need to obtain, a valid license that gives you, federal permission to do so.
Mm-hmm.
This is a federally regulated industry, and so you do need to have these requirements. This always does come with a DOT number as well as an MC number, which,
Mm-hmm.
once you obtain the DOT number, it comes with an MC number, which is just basically like the number that people are going to use to find out information such as, are you insured? When was your license renewed, or how old is it? If whether there's been a lapse in your insurance, things like that.
Right, so it's kind of like a one number that ties all the records about you together as a carrier, which a trucker is called a carrier in the system. So that department is actually part of the federal government that's in charge of making sure that these safety records are accessible and easy to find, but they're not actually that easy to find. There are a lot of different interfaces into these various databases. It's confusing as to who has control over everything. And aside from the Department of Transportation, you should also be aware of the FMCSA, which is the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. So there's lots of different players in this game, and we're going to walk you through where you can actually find some data, even if you have an incomplete picture. And basically the scenario we're going to go with here is, let's say that we are a small company, we're just trying to move some goods across the city, and our uncle or somebody else who's in business says, hey, I know some guy that does trucking for me, they're a great guy, they'll give you a great price, and they send you over the information. You're like, cool, I've got my problem solved. Then someone else that you know is like, wait a minute, I've seen that trucking company before, and texts you this picture. of a trucker that is crashed into a barrier. And they're like, I think that's the same guy. I'm pretty sure that's the same truck. And then they send you this picture too. And you're like, okay, thanks, firefighter friend, but that doesn't look good at all. Like, maybe I shouldn't go with this guy. Maybe he's a barrier-hitting maniac, and not only is he going to crash all of my precious satellite goods, because I'm a small satellite company, of course, but they're also going to, hit a minivan of people, and then all of their relatives are going to sue me. Like, I don't want to hire this guy at all. Well, how do I actually make sure that this company is safe to work with? What do I do to make sure that any red flags that I would be held criminally, potentially liable, or civilly liable, in terms of not checking, that I actually have at least checked them out to make sure that he meets the bare minimum of qualifications for any trucker? All right, well, let's take a look at this company. Well, first we can see we have a couple of pieces of information that we can use to make sure that once we find a match, we're actually looking at the right company. Now, the first is, what do you see here on the front?
You mean the license number?
Mm-hmm. And then we have another number here, which could be the DOT number, but actually doesn't really look like it, because if we enlarge it here, we can see the DOT number is printed on the door, but it's partially obscured. So if we zoom in, we can see it looks like it ends with, what is that, like 902?
Yeah, I think so. Looks
Like it starts with like a 2 and ends with a 902, but there's some numbers in here that are bunched up and just plainly aren't visible. But with 902 being the last numbers, that doesn't match with this. So it looks like this is a number that's actually unrelated to the DOT number. So it's probably like a fleet tracking number or something like that. It could even be like local, like in California, you might be aware. Do you know what the significance of an extra number might be?
Significance of an extra number? Oh, you mean a CA number?
Yeah, CA number.
Yeah, that's, when you're going to be moving freight locally within California, you also do need to have an additional license known as a CA number, which is just allows you to move freight locally within California. So
right, which isn't required, but so many vehicles do freight in California because there's a huge port there that a lot of them will actually get a CA number. So if you have a CA number, that actually means there's another database you can access and get even more information about that truck. So the markings on trucks are actually super interesting. If you see a CA number, you know that they do business in California. And you know that you can also go to the place where that information is kept and learn more information about that vehicle. It just means that each detail here is going to lead us to more information. So we have a company name, which we can use. We have a partial license plate. It actually looks like a mostly license plate. So we can see the last digits are 2495. That's pretty clear. And we can see in this other one, this other image, that the cab has a different license plate. This one ends with 3611. But it looks like it's still with the same company, Celadon Trucking. So, all right, let's start with that. If we switch over to your screen, you have a couple of the resources that are available for beginners who are, or really anybody who's looking to get started with pulling down this information pulled up. Can you go through, so I see we have the FMCSA, this is the licensing insurance panel. So why is licensing and insurance important for this industry?
Oh, well, if you're going to do business in the U.S. and you're going to be moving freight, if you are a carrier, you need to have licensing that says that you are legally able to move that freight. Usually it does come with, you need to pay for example, your insurance. That's always part of the qualifications. You also need
Which
to
is expensive, because you have to have, in some cases, like $1 million worth of insurance.
Yeah, basically that initial bond is always,
Yeah, so you have to make sure they have a bond.
Yeah.
That has like up to $100,000, like so $100,000 to $1 million in terms of, depending on what you're moving. Also, there's different types of freight, so you have to apply different for if you're moving household goods versus commercial goods. That's a different licensing process. So there's really a lot you need to interact with in terms of just sending paperwork into the federal government, and that leaves a paper trail. So here you can see that there's a lot of different inputs on this particular page, but there's some details we don't have. For example, we don't know the state that we're looking in. Is there another interface? Let's try SaferWeb.
Sure, here you go.
All right, so here we have a very simple interface called SaferWeb. And in this case, we're looking through the FMCSA's company snapshot website. So go ahead and select the name here, and let's see if we can get a hit on just the company name, which is Celadon. All right, here we go. So we have Celadon Events, no. Celadon Logistics Inc., Celadon Trucking Services, that's it.
And we got 2 of them, it looks like. Yeah, 3 of them, actually.
Celadon Trucking.
We got multiple.
Yeah, let's try the last one. Okay, so we have some interesting information here. We have the full DOT number. So it looks like 261902. And it looks like that doesn't match either one of our two photos. But 261902, hey, 902, that's a match. So we have a partial match on the DOT number now. So if we switch back to my screen for a second, we can see that the number here, 269, we can see there's a 2, a something, and a 902. Does that look like it could be the same DOT number?
Looks like it.
261902. Okay, so it looks like we have a partial match on this, and we probably have a record that's actually accurate, but we still need to verify this. So let's go back to Cristian's screen, and let's see if we can take the next step. If we scroll down, we can see that there's a bunch of different just basic information about the company. And actually, sorry, let's go to the very top. Are they still are they still active?
Let's take a look.
Authorized. Yeah, it looks like, unless I'm missing something, they're still authorized. Oh no, they're out of service date. None. Yeah, so it looks like they're still authorized. So if you scroll down, you can see that this isn't super rich and full of information, but you can see what they can move: chemicals, refrigerated food, paper products. And if you scroll down even further, is that it? Nope.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah,
So we have a breakdown of the company here. So we can see like roughly how big is the company, how many inspections they have. We can see they have over 1,000 vehicle inspections, driver inspections. You can see the percentage of out of service. So you can see how many times their vehicles were taken out of service during an inspection, which is important to know. It basically means they were flunked in the inspection to the point that they weren't allowed to drive anymore. Actually, can you enlarge your screen a little bit? Control plus. Command, sorry. There you go.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Second.
Cool. So yeah. So scroll down a bit. So we can see out of service, some more inspections.
Oh,
Okay, so we can also see this is in Canada. Let's scroll back up. So that's good, because if they do business in Canada, we can actually see results from there too. Inspections, crashes in Canada. Let's keep going up. Oh, they actually have some in Canada. All right, and if we go all the way to the top, on the right side, there's some additional databases we have access to now. There we go. So we can see there's a licensing insurance database, and before we would need to know the state, but now that we do, we can just click on this, and that should bring us to the database that we were at before. Let's see if we now know that the state is Illinois, but let's see if it lets us do the search without it. Go ahead and certify you're not a robot. You have the DOT number, so hopefully that's enough. Go ahead and search. It just trusts you for some reason. Boom. Okay, cool. So we have Celadon Trucking. We now have access to some interesting information. Go ahead and click on Generate a Report. We also have, there's two DOT numbers, 26902 and 26190. Oh, they're the same. So go ahead and generate a report. Oh, okay. So one of this is an FF number, and the other is an MC number. An FF number is an older style of tracking. MC numbers are more modern. So we can see that they have common carrier authority. They have broker authority. So they can actually, so that's important, because that means that they can actually contract out to other truckers. So if we were expecting the trucker from this company to do our business, they might actually be able to turn around and hire another trucker instead. And if they don't do their due diligence, it's still on us. So knowing that they're a broker is an important piece of information and is also useful. Here we can also see that they have posted their bond. It looks like they have a blanket company which has provided a $1 million bond. So they've actually done the bare minimum that it's necessary. They've gotten their DOT number, they have an MC number, they have a $1 million bond, and keep scrolling down, let's see what else. We can see that they have some notes on their account. So this is where the FMCSA or the Motor Carrier Administration will put down information about notes, service dates, the certificate cancels certificate, blah, blah, blah. So it cancels a different MC number, acquired by the above carrier pursuant to FM, blah, 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 blah. Reclassified from account. So basically they changed their MC number. So if we wanted to research even further down this rabbit hole, we now know an older MC number they were using that will probably pull up even more information. So if we scroll down, we can see that they're self-insured. We can see more information about just basically whether or not they have insurance as well as a bond. So, oh, they're self-insured. That's weird. Is that all, or is there more? Oh, wow. Yeah, there's a lot more. So we can see their insurance company. So this is, again, this is all the due diligence we need to do in order to make sure, well, not all, but this is some of the due diligence we need to do in order to make sure that this company is legit and they're doing everything they need to. So keep scrolling down. Keep going. All right,
I think
so
at this point, I think it's the history of their.
yeah, so it's the history of their insurance. Sorry, I'm just gonna keep scrolling. So we can see American Home Insurance, Continental Casualty Co. So we can really go back and see like exactly, this is 2014, 2015. It looks like is it getting more recent? No, 1995, it's definitely not. So this is just a history. We can see if maybe their insurance has, oh yeah, we can see their insurance has been canceled. So we might even get to see notes on why their insurance was canceled. So all of this is really useful information. And if we're trying to dig into more about the company, we might still not be sure that this is the right company. So let's go ahead and switch back to my screen. And we're going to go through another system I really like, which is the SMS, the Safety Measurement System. So now I've typed in the same information. I just used the same DOT number we just uncovered. And basically what I found is this whole safety profile with a very helpful download section. So here I can see statistics about the carrier's operation. I can see all the vehicles they have. So they have over 2,771 trucks. That is a lot. 2,533 drivers. Oh my God, that is a lot. And out of all that, they have 288 crashes. That's like kind of a lot, but for perspective here, I want to take a look at this particular truck and see if it's crashed more than once. Basically, I just want to see if if it's failed a bunch of inspections, or if otherwise this guy is kind of just a one-off, or if he's just doing sketchy things left and right. And maybe I want to get a sense of the company culture. What types of violations are they? Are they violations where it's drug abuses, or are they violations where drivers have just been fudging their logs a little bit? I really just want to see like what kinds of violations there are. And fortunately, that all is here. We can see reports of unsafe driving. We can see crash indicators. So this graph displays the carrier's measure based on 24 months of on-road performance. 0 indicates the best performance. So it looks like they've actually been steadily improving their performance over time. You can see registration details. But really, for OSINT investigators, this is a very nice way of kind of looking over it. You can see we can generate reports, which is really cool. We can see basically just a lot of information, but I like to just hit downloads, focus all. We can select really any of these, but I like taking all and just download it. I'm going to download it as an Excel. You can do XML, whatever you want. But what I like is just having this big data set where I'm just like, all right, thank you for your pretty interface, FMCSA. It's beautiful. But instead, I want to just open this and do the research myself. So I've already opened this, but you can see I'm opening it again. But this is a huge data set. It's basically everything that was in here in different tabs. And if I want to match, for example, and make sure that this vehicle that I'm looking at here hasn't been involved in other violations, I can do that because look at this data set. I can see that they've been involved in texting, not wearing seatbelts, dangerous driving. You can see notes as well about what was happening. Operated a CMV while texting. That doesn't sound good. Failed to have instruments on board CMV for installed automatic. Let's see if I'm worried about intoxication. Driver consuming intoxicating beverages within 4 hours. Okay, maybe he stopped at a casino. Driver in possession of intoxicating beverage while on duty. Okay, well that's not good. Operating, yeah. So basically we can look for things that might be concerning. We can basically search through this for concerning events that might have happened at that company. But really what I want to do here is match this partial license plate. So let's go back and see if we can actually make sure this is the right vehicle. Is this just a fluke, or maybe they sold this, it's an owner operator, something like that. Let's take the partial plate we have, which is 2495. Is that a 9? 9245? I'm not sure. So let's just do 2495. So I'll go back to my data set. 2495. And let's see if we can find a license plate that matches that pattern. 2292495. Let's go back to our license plate. 2292495. That looks like a match to me. Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. So here we can see we have actually identified some violations, and now we actually have some more information. So if we want to make sure that this is actually the right truck, there's actually services where you can decode the VIN, which is kind of cool. And here, if I just want to look at like, well, what kind of truck is this even? I can see that this is a Blue Diamond truck Continental Manufacturing Inc. I can see it was manufactured in 2015. I can see what model it is, and that is a truck tractor. Isn't that cool? Yeah, so like now I can see like, all right, well, this is a truck that has had violations. This is the type of truck it is. So I can like see some information about that. And then in the SMS system, I can be like, all right, well, what was the incident? Now this doesn't look like it has too much detail. So I can see what the incident was. Basically, if I wanted to look this up further and see the details of what it was, I could do that. But now I can also search by like VIN number. So if I want to take this and replace it, I can get how many instances of this, and I can see that there were 3 violations for this truck in and of itself. So I imagine that one of these was a result of crashing into a barrier. But if I wanted to investigate them, I can see that this was in 2018. This one was in 2019. And this one was in also 2018. So 2 different incidents in a year that resulted in some sort of inspection failure. So interesting information. And you can see at the very top here, we have more enriching data about the actual severity of an inspection failure. So here we have the date, the state that the inspection took place in, the inspection number. So there's another system where we can actually go and look at the details of any of these inspections, the level. So this is the severity of the infraction. The placardable HM vehicle inspection, I don't know what that means. HM inspection. So sorry, that's distracting. Basic. So this is just an overall categorization of the problem. So here you can see driver was on duty and under the influence of or using a narcotic drug or amphetamines. Wonderful. We can see the violation group description, drugs. So other violations, we can group these to see the data more quickly, or just group violations together to see what percentage of these were drug violations. There are codes here, so we can see which one of these codes was violated, which is useful if there's no other notes. We can look up the code that was violated. We can see the description. So if the inspector saw fit, they actually put notes in here, and the Federal Motor Carrier Transportation Administration will see like, hey, this is what happened. No spare fuses as required. Am I not going to hire this guy for not having spare fuses? I don't care. But if their violation was driver on duty under the influence of amphetamine, I might take a second
Just a little bit
about hiring this guy that my uncle said is like the best. My uncle doesn't know this guy, but this guy like might have some other issues that I don't want to entrust my freight to. So okay, so that's kind of like one way we can start to get a feeling as to whether or not this is a safe driver. We have the VIN information, we have other information we can use to kind of follow up. But what's cool here is we can then take that information and translate it into more enriching data. So here we can see that we now know that they are in the state of Illinois. Let's take a look at that. So is this a real company? We know that they have a DOT registration, so they're legit, right? We should go ahead and do business with them. Well, if we go to the Office of the Illinois Secretary of State, we can run a simple search to see whether or not they are a corporation in good standing. And you can see they are not, because they are bankrupt. So if we missed every other warning sign here, then at the very least, we should know that if we follow through to see if the next thing is, are they a real business and they're out of business, it's probably not a great sign. So we can see here that it just doesn't look good for this business in terms of investing in them or working with them. But when we go back to the page here, we can look through the very basic information on top, and we can see what their rating is, for example. We have a safety rating that allows us to make a pretty quick determination whether or not we should work with them. But really we want to see, do they even have an active status? Like have they been cleared to continue to move freight? Or is there some sort of stop on whether or not they're able to operate safely? So here, this database is all kind of linked together, and you'll notice if you go through the tools here, you can kind of learn about what kind of information is available in each section. It's very kind of focused on whatever niche area of safety it's presenting. And some of it does require for you to actually log in or make an account to access the data, but very little of it actually requires you to pay, which I think is a really interesting and unique thing about trucking, because there are a lot of kind of peripheral things around trucking that you do have to pay for, like the RMIS service, which is a private database that tracks whether or not truckers are properly insured and whether they've maybe been involved in some sort of scam that makes it so that they're unlikely to be a good business partner, like rapidly changing their name or having fraudulent business practices where they leave somebody else holding the bill for a bunch of freight. So I think, oh yeah, that was the VIN. So these databases are kind of the core of what we can do just on like a level of investigating like a trucking service for whether or not they're someone we want to do business with. Do they have a DOT number? Are they properly insured? Do they have any major suspensions in their insurance? Do they have any current violations? Or is the vehicle you're going to ship your goods on having something beyond, not having backup fuses? Maybe they have some critical safety violations where you're shipping something flammable and they have been repeatedly fined for not having fire extinguishers. These are all things where if you were to have a big accident and you didn't check, you might get in trouble. So if you're in the trucking industry or on the outside or on the periphery of it, then these are steps you should take to make sure your carriers are safe. But what about the company? So we've established that the company here may or may not be the most trustworthy when it comes to being a current active business. It looks like they are no longer in good standing in the state that they are from. So what can we do to determine whether or not they're actually, going to lose, for example, all of our passwords if we decide to do business with them? If we were to send over our credit card information, are they immediately going to lose it? Is there any way we can actually, as an OSINT researcher, look at the business side of this now that we've looked at the data sources that we're aware of on kind of the federal and trucking side? Well, yes, there is. Let's go ahead and fire up Maltego. So I've done a couple investigations here already, and you can see they look like I'm having a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ring circus. And basically what I've done here is some enrichment to find out about data breaches. So what I was interested in this is first, I wanted to map the infrastructure of what exactly is this company doing? Like, are they a company that has a really strong security culture where they're never using their company accounts in frivolous things, or basically like breaching their passwords accidentally by maybe like having company accounts tied to services they don't need. We see this a lot when companies have kind of lax security practices and people just use their work email to sign up for personal stuff all the time. And then they probably are using the same password or a similar password. It's just kind of a common habit. And then they end up getting breached. And because the company that you put your password into never tells you they got breached, suddenly your primary account can get breached if the password is at all similar. So here what I wanted to do is first identify the attack surface for this company. Do they have basic security practices in place? And also, are any of their employees constantly entering their passwords into random websites that then get breached? Probably not a good idea to do business with someone who's immediately going to have some sort of catastrophic loss of data. So let's go ahead and I'm going to open a new Maltego graph, and I will basically just run the company stalker machine, which is really easy. You can go to machines and then run machine, and we're going to go to just the company stalker, and we're going to start with a domain name. So we can go back to our photo here and we can see there's a domain, celadontrucking.com. CELADON trucking.com. So we're going to hit finish, and off it goes. Now, if we are to go to celadontrucking.com, you would find that it no longer exists. However, look at all this wonderful information that Maltego is able to pull up, including the email addresses of all these people who probably no longer work there because it's bankrupt. So if we scroll through our first filter email address list, we can see that it says to remove unselected entities from graph. This is where we are going to eliminate anything that's like a catch-all. Anything also that looks ridiculous, because sometimes Maltego will pull from sources that are not totally reliable. So if somebody used this, for example, on a marketing page and that person no longer works there, or someone was making fun of them and made a fake page that ranked really highly in traffic that had fake email addresses on it, that might poison the results a little bit. And we might see, for example, if you were to do this to whitehouse.gov, you would find a bunch of like really insulting email addresses at whitehouse.gov that are not real. So you just have to be aware that we're pulling from open source data sources here. But in general, these are going to be pretty good. We just want to get rid of stuff like connect at celadontrucking.com. That's not a guide. That's just like that's a general payroll, whatever. I don't know what that is. Employee relations at Celadon Trucking. We can get web admin at Celadon Trucking. We're probably not going to drill down on these because these aren't employers or employees, investors. We kind of want to see who works here and is anybody here vulnerable to being breached. So I'm going to get rid of drive at Celadon Trucking, and then we'll click on proceed with selected, and it'll enrich it to the next level. So in yours, go ahead and just do the company stalker, and then celadontrucking.com, C-E-L-A-D-O-N trucking. Cool. So the machine is complete. I'll click on my overview, and I can see I have this huge wall that just goes like this. And here we can see a little bit of information about the phrase. This is a phrase, a document, an email address. One thing that we've accidentally done is got a bunch of internal documents. We got their whistleblowing stuff, like guidelines. We got their earnings call schedules, code of conduct and ethics, transition reports. So if we saw like a bunch of concerning information here, then that might be something that immediately is a red flag. But generally this looks consistent with a big company that has a bunch of PDFs available for their employees and stuff that is just, now scraped and available for us to see here. So we can see a lot of these are PDFs, investors.celadontrucking.com, and we can start to see that there's some information. This is a document. If we want to investigate it further, we can click on properties, and then there's a URL here that we can follow in order to actually see this document. So let's go ahead and just see what it looks like. So we can see that even though the Celadon website is down, we have an investor group information. So we can start seeing information about the company itself. This is probably, I'm not going to go into it, but let's just say that it is not secure. So we can immediately see that this company might not be using the most cybersecurity aware practices. Pretty much everybody has been using HTTPS for quite some time now. So if this company in 2020 is still not using, even in 2019, is still not using HTTPS, that is a pretty bad sign. And just, as an open source researcher, we're going to use tools like the Internet Archive or the Wayback Machine. And we can do that to just take a look at whether or not they were ever using HTTPS. If they were, I would be so happy. But back when they were in business, we can see that this company, let's see. Come on. All right. Oh, they were. Okay, I withdraw some of my criticism. It looks like back in 2018 when they were in business, they did actually bother, not on their investor page, but on their main page to use HTTPS, which is good. It's one of the first good things I found. But in general here, we can start to see not only where their web assets are. So I've gone from just having a company name to now having this fairly large data set, which when I reorganize by clicking on the view here in order to make it more readable or less readable, depending on how you see it, you can see that from this one website, everything is exploded out. And I now have not only email addresses, but also types of technology they're using. So I have individual people that have been broken out from the email addresses, and I have some documents that have been discovered. So if I want to just start with the email addresses, I can select everyone, and then I can go here and organize by entity type. And I'm going to scroll until I see the email addresses. I'm just going to select all of them kind of messily by just doing this. And then I can basically use that to right mouse click on them. And what I'm going to do is look for breaches. So I'm going to do PWN, have I been pwned? And I'm going to look for all breaches of an email address. So basically what I did was I started from scratch. I took this company name I saw on the truck that was crashed. I ran it through Maltego. And now I have a bunch of potentially breached email accounts that are associated with that company. So if I want to quickly assess whether or not this company is constantly getting breached or if they have a good security culture, let's scroll up and see how it's going. Oh, and I can't see yet. So as these are coming in, there's going to be two different main results. So I'll go ahead and just select everything. And the results from this are going to be either not breached, which I can click on here. And if I want to see all the results that have been not breached, I can do a couple of functions by clicking on investigate. So, all right, so I have one thing, which is a return of a result that is not breached. And when we do a have I been pwned query, the results come back either breached with information or not breached. And we can differentiate between these two by selecting, in this case, not breached, and then clicking on add parents or add children. So if I click on add parents, then I have a list of all the things that are basically directly related to it. So here we can see all the email addresses that were not breached. But if I wanted to reverse this and instead look at all the email addresses that were breached, let me see, wait. So if I do this and then I select add children, then what's below it is, oh, well, wait. Select everything, not breached, and then add children. What does that select? Oh, okay. Nothing. It selects nothing. And then if I select add parents, still nothing. All right, well, I'm not sure why it's doing that. It shouldn't. But either way, let me just zoom in and look at it manually. Okay, here we can see that there are already some breaches that were recorded. So let me try. Oh, everything, was everything already selected? Maybe. So I'll try adding parents. There we go, okay. So by selecting a particular breach, I can click on add parents and it immediately adds all of the different accounts that were involved in this breach. So I don't know why it's not selecting them on this side. Oh no, it is. Okay, so here we can see everything that's selected in the detail view. So these are all accounts that are linked to this breach at verification.io. And if we want to double click on verification or right mouse click on verification.io and then enrich breach domain, we can see more information about this breach to see if it was something really serious. What here was actually lost. So let's go over here. And here we can see the information about the breach that this company was involved in. And it looks like quite a lot of employees of this company were involved in this breach. So in 2019, the email address for validation service, verification.io, suffered a data breach discovered by Bob, and Vinny. Bob and Vinny found this breach. So it was a Mongo database that was left open, 733 million unique email addresses. Many records also included personal attributes such as names, phone numbers, IP address. No passwords were included in the data. Okay, so they're in the clear for now. Right now, from this one breach, we've only seen just some information. But let's see here. We have a LinkedIn breach. Is this a LinkedIn breach? Let's add the parents and find out. Yes, okay, so it's a breach. So it's a LinkedIn data breach. Let's see what it was. So we'll enrich the breach. Passwords. Okay, so it looks like this company had passwords exposed on LinkedIn. Now, are they the same passwords for these people's normal accounts? Probably, maybe not, but it's problematic here that they use their work emails to set up these LinkedIn accounts, and then those passwords were breached. So already we've identified that here we have 4 different employees of this company have had their passwords breached on LinkedIn after using their account to sign up. So here we can also investigate any other breaches. And if I want to go, let's see, we can also see all the details here. So here we can see phone numbers, geographic locations, IP addresses. This is basically a breakdown of all the data that was lost in the breaches. And if we're worried about anything in particular, we can filter down and only look for things that have, for example, passwords breached. In this case, that right there. So the structure of this looks a little bit confusing. You can see that Apollo.io is also a breach. And if you ever want to adjust the view, you can click on these different models to kind of like apply a different logic to the way that it lays them out. If I want to click on these more linear ones, when you have a lot of data, it gets super stretched out. But sometimes it makes it a bit easier to understand what's going on here. And in some cases, if I just want to see all the different breaches there are, I can see that they were using Evite. They were involved in a online spammer breach. They were involved in the B2B USA business breach, LinkedIn, data and leads, Exactus. So if we want, they were involved in the You've Been Scraped breach. So all this is kind of concerning information if we wanted to just make sure this company doesn't constantly get breached. I can select all these breaches just kind of manually like this, although there's a better way to do this. And if I just have these here and I just enrich them, then I can see if passwords were involved in any of these other breaches that just happened. Whoa, yeah, there we go. So now, if you look down here, I've not only identified people in this company that have been breached, I've also created the ability to filter and make sure that the breaches don't involve passwords. So here I can see passwords were involved in this breach. And if I want to go to add parents, I can see there's a couple different breaches that involve passwords. LinkedIn, Adobe, Evite, and ShareThis.com all involve password breaches. So I can go up again, and we can see that these are email addresses then that have lost passwords in these breaches. So as you can see, Maltego is really easy to just kind of take something we literally find on the side of a truck and assess very quickly. All right, is this company using HTTPS on their pages? Do they have a bunch of internal documents that are being leaked that mine might be next? Do they have employees that are constantly having their email accounts breached when they put their email addresses into random websites that then breach them on the internet? Basically, this is a way to be able to get started with taking a piece of information from a photo or during an investigation where you need to be able to quickly assess whether or not a business is legit or not, and then move on to assessing their infrastructure. Is this a company that is actually doing their part when it comes to keeping their data secure? Or is this the partner who is immediately going to take your credit card information and then expose it in the worst way possible? So we've taken an OSINT investigation and started from basically just some federal databases that keep track of truckers, and we've taken it all the way to a Maltego investigation where we can see if this business has the online presence to suggest that they're even real. Because there are lots of businesses in trucking that will spin up a trucking business, get a bunch of debt, and basically not pay their bills, and then shut the company down and then start it up again. So the company that we did today didn't do that. They were just a huge trucking service that recently went bankrupt, and we're pretty sure aren't going to be angry that we did our investigation on them today.
Let's hope not.
Hopefully not. But it was kind of a throwback to when we had to do this in real life and had to use all these skills every day to make sure the truckers we were about to work with weren't some crazy maniacs who had a history of running people off the road.
Yep. Basically.
All right, so today we used open source databases, federal databases, and Maltego. And we pretty much kept these searches to things that are free. So if you want to try out Maltego, I highly recommend that you do so. It is a really excellent tool for all sorts of investigations. And if you're dealing with even partial data on the side of a truck, and you want to start looking at the cyber infrastructure of the company that you might be working with, then this is a good way to see if they actually have their stuff together, or maybe if they have a bunch of fragmented online domains that aren't even using HTTPS in this day and age, or maybe have some other problems that might lead you to not want to work with them. So again, this has been a brief shout out to trucking. It's a vital industry, and there's lots of times that you might need to use these resources if you're shipping basically anything to make sure the carrier you're going to go with is actually supposed to be on the road. So hopefully this has been a useful piece of information to anybody that's ever been curious about trucking, about where you can figure out whether or not a trucker is certified to even be out there, and whether you might be found to be responsible if they get in an accident for something that they've done a million times and you should have been able to catch. Cool. All right. Well, hopefully that wasn't too traumatic. It's been a while since we had to deal with trucking, but it is a fun industry, and there's a lot of really useful information that everyday people can learn from it. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And hopefully we can come back to some more fun OSINT tricks using Maltego and investigating some things besides trucking, unless you guys really want us to stay on trucking, in which case we'll just make the show about trucking. Just let us know. All right, we'll see you guys next time. And a big thank you to Varonis for sponsoring this, of course. We also want to point you guys towards them if you're worried about someone breaking into your trucking company, because although we are clever and can find all these different people losing their passwords,